Day. Max Kellerman, they got Danny Dimes in the fold, but should the Giants consider trading up into the top 10 and getting a QB?
Yes, they should. And they need help on the offensive line, and they need an edge rusher. Otherwise, they actually don't have that many needs. I think Danny Dimes has a chance to be a good quarterback. If someone said, do I think he's going to be a great quarterback? I would say no. I don't think he's going to be a great quarterback, but I think he could be a good one. But I think he could be a good one. He didn't make a lot of progress year two. I know he didn't have Saquon. He didn't have a great offensive line. All that's true. But he didn't make, year two is the progress year. Now, if the Giants were drafting at 27 and they had to mortgage the farm in order to move up, I would say no. What I'm talking about is this. I've seen mock drafts recently where Trey Lance is going 9th. If Trey Lance is sitting there at 9 and you're at 11, and you could move up a couple of slots and snag a guy who has potentially greatness in him, potentially, but who needs some time. You know, if you draft a Trey Lance, you don't come in and start him right away, so you can still see what you have in Daniel Jones, and if you have something great, well then great. But if you don't and you look and you go, he's okay, I'd like a little more, you got your guy, and he has a year or two to see. So I'd say under these circumstances, given the fact that the Giants actually don't have that many needs, if they got quarterback right, why not make sure you got quarterback right if a guy who can be potentially great is sitting there 1 or 2 slots above where you're going to pick?
So many holes in your argument, we don't even have time to get into it. Number one, Trevor Lawrence is the projected number 1 overall pick. Everybody else is questionable right now. We believe in Justin Fields, but there's a whole bunch of people that have thrown questions into the mix. Zach Wilson, the level of competition he's going against at BYU. Trey Lance coming from North Dakota State. Mac Jones, considered talented and accurate, but had some issues in terms of, his mobility, all of these kind of things that they've talked about. The only surefire bet is Trevor Lawrence. And after that, there is no surefire bet. So why would you trade Daniel Jones to create more questions for yourself at the quarterback position when nobody knows what those other guys are going to do, okay? That's number one. Number two, there were questions about the offensive line. You brought that up in the past. Number three, you've been raving about the pickup of Galladay. Well, if you got him, right, what does that mean? That means you wasn't satisfied with what you had in Sterling Shepard and Evan Ingram or Darius Slayton, whomever the case may be. Plus, you didn't have Saquon Barkley. But now you're getting him back. And last year was Joe Judge's first year, which we all, especially myself, have recognized. This guy was incredibly impressive in his first year. And that's with all of those question marks. Questions at the offensive line, questions by the wide receivers, okay? Saquon Barkley, so you really didn't have a running game, all right? They were the 31st ranked offense in points, 31st ranked in yards. That's second to last in both categories. And obviously Saquon Barkley's absence had a lot to do with that. So what do? You get Daniel Jones back in the mix. You make sure that Joe Judge has him in tow with Saquon Barkley, and now you've got some receivers, not just in Galladay, but you're going to keep a few of those dudes you already have, plus you're about to draft a wide receiver, if we are to believe Mel Kiper, and there's no reason that we shouldn't, in terms of somebody as electrifying as Jalen Waddle. Why would you move Daniel Jones when there's so many questions at the quarterback position? Okay,
Dan, what do you think?
About who to draft. Why would you do that? Makes no sense.
Yeah, Max is everything that's wrong with quarterback perspective in the NFL right now. Max, you trying to tell me that the Giants moving off and going up to go get a quarterback off of Daniel Jones is like people telling me Fessie's a good teammate on the challenge because he beat Kyle in Hall Brawl. No, he's not. Kyle was a layup. He's still a bad teammate. Daniel Jones in 2 years has 35 touchdowns, 22 picks, and 63% completion percentage. And I would make the claim that his situation hasn't been all that different than Sam Darnold's. His support hasn't been all that different than Sam Darnold's, who was historically bad. Coaching change, god-awful offensive line, an average run game, substandard wide receivers on the outside, at least performance-wide, a disappointing tight end. So what Daniel Jones has done to go sit there and go, we got to move off of him. He's got 35 touchdowns and 22 picks. And this is what happens when you take a player at 6 and you expect him to become something that he's not. And that's what I said on draft night with Daniel Jones. He is not a player that is going to wow you, that he's going to be an unbelievable quarterback. But you took him at 6 in New York, and so now Giants fans, like Max Kellerman, expect him to be unbelievable. And he's not talented enough to be unbelievable. No. And so often, we want to move off young quarterbacks. Imagine if the Buffalo Bills decided before last year to move off of Josh Allen. Because you know what? He hadn't become what they hoped to become. No, they didn't use that as an excuse. They said, we have to get better. Let's go to our offensive line improve. Great. Let's go get a number 1 receiver, Stephon Diggs. Great. Let's improve our defense. Now the quarterback has a chance to show us what he is. And I would say even this. Daniel Jones still doesn't have the proper support in New York to show us what he can potentially be because it's the same offensive line. The Giants don't need to panic at quarterback right now. You still have 2 years to figure out who and what Daniel Jones is. He's got one pretty darn good year as a rookie and one bad year last year. And Max, you say the second year development is, why would you expect him to develop last year? No offseason, new head coach, average offensive scheme, below average support. What quarterback was going to develop last year in New York? Which one?
Well, I would appreciate if the both of you didn't put words in my mouth. Number one, I didn't say trade Daniel Jones. And number two, Dan, I didn't even say necessarily move off him. But you're right. Drafted Daniel Jones not going to wow you. He's not going to be a great quarterback. Well, damn it, I want a great quarterback. I'd like a guy at least with a chance to be great. So what I am saying, which I said very clearly, but I'll say it again for you two, because apparently you didn't hear it the first time, is what a project like Trey Lance allows you to do. And I'm not saying move up 20 slots. I'm saying if he's there at 9 or 10, you're at 11, you jump up and grab him. Doesn't take that much draft capital, like to move up to 2 or something like that. What you do at that point is you see. Now there are no excuses for Daniel Jones. You'll take an offensive lineman in the second round. You'll try and find a pass rusher because that's on the outside because actually your defense is pretty good. Now you'll see if you have something in Daniel Jones in the next couple of years. Great. Now you have an excellent prospect as a backup. He has not only backup value, but trade value. Number one. Number two.
And then you wonder why we're confused.
Doesn't turn out
and then
to
you
be
wonder
a
why
great
we're confused.
quarterback.
We barely understand what the hell you're saying right now.
Trey Lance
You're the one confusing everybody. Don't trade. Well, I never said don't trade him.
Perfectly clear. I said the same thing twice.
Who moves up in the draft to the number 2 to draft the quarterback, but keeps the one they have when they just draft the top 10 2 years ago? Who does that?
I do.
Who does that?
I do.
And when you talk about,
I thought
excuse me, really?
I didn't like the pick of Daniel Jones in the first place.
Didn't you say you liked him?
Still,
Hold it.
What I
Didn't you say you liked him once he got here and you saw him compared to Dwayne Haskins?
I don't love him. I'd like a quarterback I love.
So now you like him, but you don't love him now. Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
So
my bad. You're not in love with him. My bad. I'm sorry.
Him to be the
I
New
get
York
it now.
quarterback.
Like, love, or hate. I like him.
You want him to be the New York quarterbacks. You don't want it to be the New York Giants. God forbid we build a football team. Let's just keep taking quarterbacks till we get a great one. Because there's like 6 of those guys on the planet. And so if we move up to 9, we'll find one. And so in 2 years, we'll use the 9th pick, or 3 years, we'll use the 9th pick and the 6th pick on quarterbacks. And if one of them doesn't work out, he'll just be a really good backup. Don't worry that we can't block anybody on the offensive line or the fact that we have the 2nd pick in the draft at running back and he doesn't have anywhere to run. Don't worry about that. And don't worry about winning football games. Let's just see if we can take a bunch of quarterbacks. No, that's not how you build an organization.
The Giants improved in free agency. They have a good defense. They are missing an outside threat as a real edge rusher,
Max.
and they do need help on the offensive line. But they can't get the offensive line right. They're as likely to get something with a second round pick.
You want to
move
move
off
off a quarterback
right
that in 2 years is 35 touchdowns, 22 picks, 63% completion percentage, with a bad team around him in 2 years.
Of the ball.
Just because he's not great yet.
Know what Trey Lance doesn't do? Turn the
this.
ball
The
over.
Just be quiet. The segment's over.
Pick.
We've heard you.
The Giants
Unbelievable.
have the 11th pick. Mel Kiper
Apparently
Jr. has them taking Jalen Waddle. Okay, we'll keep it moving. Tomorrow on First Take,
like
everybody.
Waddle, too.
Our draft blitz, we take a look at the Philadelphia Eagles. They traded